So we're going to continue on the differences between communication in science and communication in media, and we're going to look at the mass media limitation. If you remember, social media organization are exerted by the social and economic demands. If you remember this diagram that I've shown you, there is economic pressures and also social and political pressures on the media. Media is the one in the middle. So media are uh, facing numerous pressures and demand. So the previous diagram showed that media is exerted by numerous demands and also forces. For example, the tension between serious news and popular entertainment. So the media practitioner usually they would like to produce information that is um, obviously useful to the audience. How they do feel some sort of moral duty when they are writing their report. However, they are compelled to supply what the audience want, because when you know what the audience, when you write what the audience want, you're gonna get the audience attention, and indirectly you're gonna get profit from there, profit through the advertisement, also profit through their purchasing of the media, for example, the newspaper. Um, Also, media is so because of all these demands and compelled to write what the audience want, it's somehow dampened their work or effort in communicating science. Because first thing first, like if you remember, one of the challenges of science that we discussed in week 3 is that science is considered as hard, science is considered as boring, science is considered as complicated. And even though media practitioners who are working on science communication, they wanted to increase the public awareness of science, but they are compelled to obliged to all these demands and also all these forces. So, and also, you need to know that there are limited space on newspaper or on the website, and also with the airtime, so they cannot write everything. They cannot write. That's why when you have stories on science in the newspaper, or in any news platform, it's rather very general, sometimes not specific. And if you have science background, you're going to question the way they write their articles. But in their defense, they write it because they have limited space, limited airtime, and also they need to write something that is relatable to the various audience background. They also have tight deadlines. So these deadlines causes them to be dependent on pre-digested material. For example, they usually refer to articles that have been published from um, news agency, rather than go through, for example, like Reuters or Bernama. They don't really go to the scientists. They don't usually go to the scientists and interview them. They just take whatever already in the news agency, and they just rephrase it and write it, and also give a citation or reference to the sources. And also, when they write their stories, the thing with writing articles in news, there is editor. There is an editors who actually decide what's gonna be published. Usually, even so, they have a like a very big scope, such an interesting and a very breaking through news. But if the editors decide that this news is not suitable for the Malaysian readers, it's going to be taken out um, from the news. So editors have a huge influence on all news reporting and feature sections. News routine, if you remember. So basically what I have just gone through with you, all this compelled to supply what audience want, limited time and airspace, tight deadline, and editors, these are part of what we call news routines. So news routines is basically repeated practices and form that make it easier for journalists to accomplish tasks in an uncertain world while working with production constraint. So these are the constraints, but so what they usually do is just they follow the routines. In science, we follow the methodology, the scientific method. But here in news, in the mass media, they follow the routine. They just do what usually they will do. They will avoid things, like I said, if they know something that's controversial and won't be accepted by the editors, they will just avoid it. So that's why you want to see quite a mundane news report in the newspaper. So the thing with the news, it has to be new. It has to have news value, but it cannot be very controversial. So they are working in a very tight space there if you think about it. Also, when you talk about communicating science, communicating, a research, so they need to identify which research is important, because there are numbers of researchers that occur in a country, especially in Malaysia, and every research are going to say that their research are significant. So how does this journalist going to decide which one is significant, which one is going to attract the attention of audience, and how are they going to write all these stories? How scientific and boring the stories are, the research are, into a very interesting and has a high news value in it. So, in short, they usually just rely on routines, because they have to produce a mass scale news, and they facing all this news routine, all this limitation, and therefore that's why you see that not many interesting news in science communication. Plus, you also have to bear in mind that most of these journalists do not have background in science. I think, based on my study, I do found that about only 10% who have background in science, but the rest of them, people who are trained in mass communication, or what do you call that? Mass communication, yeah, mass com. So they don't know, is for example, if they interview doctors or they interview scientists, they have to translate what the scientists tell them, and they don't have time to double check the information, whether the things that they write is actually aligned with what the scientists have told them in the interview. So that's why in the end you're going to see how sometimes the report or the stories in the news media are rather, if you have science background, you're gonna see it as rather funny. Instead of, for example, instead of referring a disease caused by bacteria or virus, they're gonna use the word like germs, which is more acceptable and familiar to the audience. Once you're going to use the words, you're not even talking about the molecular part of the diseases. So, this are the limitation that are faced by the mass media practitioner. And we have to admit that even though the science people are trying their best to disseminate new knowledge, these people who are in the mass media also trying their best to disseminate information on science, but in their limitation. All right, so I think that's all from me today. I will give you, you need to, for today activity, what you need to do is you're gonna watch 2 videos, and from that videos, you're gonna answer some questions given, and you have to submit the question by tonight. And we're gonna do a follow-up activities on today's activities. All right. Um, as usual, please post any question if you have any question. If you find any point of my lecture is quite confusing, do let me know. Just WhatsApp in the group so like the rest of the class knows. It's good if you can, be watch the lecture during the lecture time so that you don't have to do it later on. in the class, so you'll be on time with everything. That's all from me for today. I'll see you next week. Bye.